Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with Morsels of a Thought number 1473. Today we are talking about the Stoics. I seek to entertain you a bit, to impart a little bit of knowledge, except for knowledge isn't always wisdom. Knowing what to do is a form of wisdom. And so doing the right thing to do is called virtue. And I want to create more virtue, bring out more virtue in the world and change the world. Of course, why not? And of course, I seek to inspire, I seek to impart, I seek to entertain a little. And I just got a new book. I got a new book. And we are going to start and end in one book and look at the other book that we have just finished. In a way, we finished it. In a way, we didn't. Because I skipped through lines in the introduction when it was 50 pages long. About 57 pages long. So I read you quite a bit of it. I think I've read you about 45 pages of it. So I'm going to read you a little of the rest of on the book of Marcus and go to the end of the introduction of Meditations. The meditations. We have actually read through every single one of the swoops of meditations. Is that my chair? Yeah, good catch. All right. So, and then we're going to look at what is edited and translated by Robin Waterfield, Epictetus, the complete works, handbook, discourses, and fragments. That's interesting. So first of all, let's continue in the later influence. How or by whom? Okay, this was translated by Gregory Hayes, by the way. This is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was a Stoic, even though he didn't mention Stoicism but once. Later influence. How or by whom the Meditations was preserved is unknown. The late 4th century Historia Augusta paints a picture of Marcus lecturing on the Meditations to a spellbound audience at Rome, one of the charming fantasies in which that particular work abounds, but certainly an invention. In other words, that fantasy was an invention. The passage does suggest, however, that the text was in circulation by the 4th century. That's the years 300s. When it is also mentioned by the orator, 300s starting from 301. Okay. When it is also mentioned by the orator Themistius, it was very likely familiar also to a contemporary of Themistius's. Now, we don't think that the Roman scholars, the scholars of the Latin language, do not think there was a th sound, but some people say that there was Themistius. It would have been Themistius, more or less, but we don't know. The neo-pagan emperor Julian, known to later ages as Julian the Apostate, in whose dialogue The Caesars, Marcus is pictured as a model for the kind of philosopher king that Julian himself aspired to be. The century that followed, Themistius and Julian was one of decline, at least in the West. Decline in political institutions and also in the knowledge of Greek. Now, the Roman Empire was divided into two parts after a while, and the left side, west side, disintegrated before the right side, which continued until Ataturk, which was the Turkish Empire, Ottoman Empire on the right side, on the east side, until that's like the 1800s or 1700s or something. So anyway, the Roman Empire lasted through almost 2,000 more years, okay? All right, the century that followed Themistius and Julian was one of decline, or at least in the West. Decline in political institutions and also in the knowledge of Greek. For the next 1,000 years, Marcus's work, like that of Homer and Euripides, would remain unknown to Western readers. Copies survived in the Greek-speaking East, of course, but even there, the Meditations seems to have been little read. For centuries, all trace of it is lost until, at the beginning of the 10th century, that's the 900 ones and on, it reappears in a letter from the scholar and churchman Aurelius, who writes to a friend, "I have had for a while now a copy of the Emperor Marcus's invaluable book. It was not only old, but practically coming apart. I have had it copied and can now pass it on to posterity in better shape." Whether Aurelius's copy was indeed responsible for the work's survival, we do not know. At any rate, its readership seems to have increased in the centuries that followed. It is quoted a generation or two later by the vast Byzantine encyclopedia known as the Suda, and it was perhaps around this period also that an unknown Byzantine poet composed a brief appreciation that came to be copied along with the text. On the book of Marcus, if you desire to master pain, unroll this book and read with care, and in it find abundantly a knowledge of the things that are, those that have been and those to come. The fall of Constantinople to the Turks, that became Istanbul. The fall of Constantinople to the Turks in 1453. Oh, okay, it was only 1400 years. Okay, more than 1,000 years later. The fall of Constantinople to the Turks in 1453 led to an exodus of scholars, bringing with them the Greek texts that inspired the Italian Renaissance. The Meditations must have been among them, yet even at this date, the work's survival hung by a thread. The only complete manuscript to survive is a 14th century codex, now in the Vatican, which is riddled with errors. The first printed edition did not appear until 1559, when Wilhelm Holtzmann, known as Xylander, Xylander, produced a text from what seems to have been a more reliable manuscript. That manuscript, unfortunately, has not survived, but even at its best, it was a very imperfect witness to what Marcus himself wrote. Our text of the meditation, which we have already read here, contains a number of passages that are garbled, in which one or more crucial words seem to have been omitted. Some of these errors may be due to the confused state of Marcus's original copy. Others may have been accidentally introduced in the course of the copying and recopying that the work underwent in the millennium following Marcus's death. In some cases, the informed guesswork of scholars over several centuries has been able to restore the original text. In others, there is still uncertainty. The Meditations has never attracted great interest from professional students of the classics, and the reasons are perhaps understandable. It contains few direct references to historical events and provides relatively little material for social historians. As evidence for later Stoicism, it pales beside the greater bulk of Epictetus's discourses. Yet, it has always exerted a fascination on those outside the narrow orbit of classical study, perhaps especially on those who can best appreciate the pressures that Marcus himself faced. The Meditations was among the favorite reading of Frederick the Great. A recent American president has claimed to reread it every few years, but it has attracted others too which recent president? I want to see what year this thing was copyrighted the first time. We are reading the 53rd the 53rd printing of the 2002 translation copyright. Now, the first translation copyright was in 2002. Okay. So, Whoever the recent president was, he was president by 2002 and not later. Okay? So, the Meditations was among the favorite reading of Frederick the Great. A recent American president has claimed to reread it every few years, but I bet it was Clinton or something. Anyway, but it has attracted, because he doesn't respect Clinton, but anyway, but it has attracted others too, from poets like Pope, Goethe, and Arnold, to the Southern planter William Alexander Percy, who observed in his autobiography that, quote, there is left to each of us, no matter how far defeat pierces, the unassailable wintry kingdom of Marcus Aurelius. It is not outside, but within, and when all is lost, it stands fast. It's got footnote number 12 that I found where the footnotes were finally. The footnote number 12 says, William Alexander Percy, Lanterns on the Levee, Baton Rouge, Louisiana State University Press, 1973, page 313. If Marcus has been studied less than many ancient authors, he has been translated more than most. But it has been a generation since his last English incarnation, and the time seems ripe for another attempt. This was my intention, Gregory Hayes, in what follows has been to represent in readable English both the content and the texture of the Meditations. Ooh. I have been especially concerned, really, that's hard to do. I don't mean to mock it. I'm not mocking it. I'm saying ooh because I'm really oohing the fact that he said that. I have been especially concerned, says the translator, to convey the patchwork character of the original, both the epigrammatic concision that characterizes some entries and the straggling discursiveness of others. I hope the results will bear out my conviction that what a Roman emperor wrote long ago for his own use can still be meaningful to those far removed from him in time and space. We do not live in Marcus's world, but it is not as remote from us as we sometimes imagine. There could be no better witness to the effect of Meditations on a modern reader than the Russian poet Joseph Brodsky, whose essay Homage to Marcus Aurelius takes its departure from the famous statue of the emperor on the Capitoline Hill in Rome. I saw him for the first, he says, this is poet Joseph Brodsky saying, I saw him for the first time a few years ago on a wet winter night in the company of a stray Dalmatian. I was returning by taxi to my hotel after one of the most disastrous evenings in my entire life. The next morning I was leaving Rome for the States. I was drunk. The traffic moved with the speed one wishes for one's funeral. At the foot of the Capitol, I asked the driver to stop, paid, and got out of the car. Presently, I discovered I was not alone. A middle-sized Dalmatian appeared out of nowhere and quietly sat down a couple of feet away. Its sudden presence was so oddly comforting that momentarily I felt like offering it one of my cigarettes. For a while, we both stared at the horseman's statue, and suddenly, presumably because of the rain and the rhythmic pattern of Michelangelo's pilasters and arches, all got blurred, and aghast at that blur, and against that blur, the shining statue, devoid of any geometry, seemed to be moving, not at great speed, and not out of this place, but enough for the Dalmatian to leave my side and follow the bronze progress. Oh, so he was drunk and everything. Interesting. And then it tells you about further reading. So, if you're interested in Marcus Aurelius, we have read almost all in terms of the introduction. We have read all of the books, 12 books. So, congratulations if you stayed through all this. And I want to say, I must say If you like what I show you, please like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. My handle is YingOrange99, all one word, Ying with a Y, orange like the fruit, 99 as in the year. So YingOrange99. I've had that email since I don't know when. Anyway, so if you'd like and subscribe there, please do, because I have so far 24 subscribers, and I love them all. And thank you, John Park, for being the first one. And thank you, Ernest. And thank you, Carol. I hope you do. Anyway, so I have never said that before. So it took me 1,473 episodes to finally think of saying that like other people do. Edited and translated here by Robin Waterfield is the Epictetus Complete Works, Handbook and Discourses and Fragments. So this is a handbook. I will read the back cover to you. ISBN 13-978-0-226-76947-9, $18. ISBN 10-0-226-76947-X. Okay. Some things are up to us and some are not. Let me get my glasses back on. Okay. Epictetus was born into slavery around the year 50 CE. So he was about 200 years before Marcus. And upon, no, CE, Common Era, so he was 100 years before Marcus. Sorry. Epictetus was born into slavery around the year 50 CE, and upon being granted his freedom, he became a philosophy teacher. Shouldn't we all? He is now considered the most important exponent of Stoicism, Epictetus. And thank you, Doug Vaughn, for introducing me to the name, because I'd never heard it before, ever. And also thank you for having me start on this 1,430-something program, 1,473 program. Anyway, starting. Like I say, I won't forget who helped me start off, and I won't forget my supporters. And here's past and present, of course. There are some that have been streaks of long support and who have gone on to other things. And then there are some who have just recently started on streaks of long support. All right. Epictetus was born into slavery around the year 50 CE, and upon being granted his freedom, became a philosophy teacher. He is now considered the most important exponent of Stoicism, and his surviving work comprises a series of impassioned discourses delivered live and recorded by his student Arrian, as Arrian, as well as the handbook, Arrian's own take on the heart of Epictetus's teaching. Edited and translated by renowned scholar Robin Waterfield, this book collects the complete works of Epictetus, bringing to modern readers his insights on how to cope with death, exile, the people around us, the whims of the emperor, fear, illness, and much more. Don't we all? I'm going to show you this again. He says insights on how to cope with death, exile, the people around us, the whims of this emperor, the emperor fear, illness, and much more. Now we are going into that state of a union, right? Maybe some will disagree with me, some. Okay. Quote, "This new translation of Epictetus by Waterfield is very welcome indeed. Both the translation and the notes help to make Epictetus more accessible than ever. Especially valuable is the introduction, which expertly situates Epictetus's thought within wider Stoic philosophy and touches on many of the key debates in recent scholarship." John Sellers, author of The Pocket Epicurean. That was John Sellers. The next person saying something is Brad Inwood, author of Ethics After Aristotle. This is now the best English translation of Epictetus available. Idiomatic yet accurate, it captures Epictetus's voice in all its moods, direct and personal, often brusque and challenging, sometimes ironic, sometimes humorous. The introduction and notes are a reliable and up-to-date guide on the most influential Stoic in today's world. Next, we have somebody saying, Waterfield is a gifted writer and a superb classicist whose translation makes Epictetus come alive on the page. His introduction, at once scholarly and highly accessible, sheds new light on the text and philosophy of this famous Stoic popularizer. Epictetus's live talks, preserved by Arrian, mix street preacher with acerbic comic. This edition of the complete works of Epictetus will be prized by all interested in delving into Stoic philosophy. We couldn't ask for a better guide than Waterfield. And this is set by Nancy Sherman, author of Stoic Wisdom, Ancient Lessons for Modern Resilience. Ooh, that's what it's called. And then the University of Chicago Press, www.press.u.chicago, in other words, letter U, Chicago, .edu, okay? And then this part here says, book and cover design monograph by Matt Avery. And I'll read you one last paragraph that the University of Chicago Press says. Epictetus, ca. 50 to 130 CE, which was like 10 years before Marcus Aurelius, was a Greek Stoic philosopher. Robin Waterfield is an independent scholar and translator living in southern Greece. In addition to translating 30 volumes of Greek literary works, he has written numerous books ranging from children's fiction to Greek history. His most recent book is The Making of a King, also published by the University of Chicago Press. So, we can't compare yet because we haven't been introduced yet. That's why I said no comparison. But we are now headed into Epictetus, the complete works, and we have finished with the meditations. But we can see whether meditations were influenced by Epictetus's works. We will see in the future. Okay, so here we are. I hope I have inspired you to gain some wisdom. Wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is more than knowledge. Wisdom is polished knowledge. Okay? Old Kinderhack.